Hello, everybody, and welcome into this latest edition of the Michigan State Spartans Insider Podcast. I'm your beat reporter from Michigan State Spartans on SI, Aiden Champion. Going to get back into some football recruiting talk because lately Michigan State has kind of hit a bit of a rough patch. Obviously, they had a heck of a month of June, landing 17 commits in the month after having just four scholarship scholarship commits going into June. I have only landed one prospect from the class of 2026 so far this month. Um, and that was Chris Addison, edge rusher. Uh, Another underrated prospect. But other than that, been kind of missing to not really an alarming amount. I mean, I say that because you're in a great place. Okay. Nobody expected what Michigan State was able to rattle off in June, especially considering where they sat going into the month. If you weren't to land any more commits from here on out, I'd say you had a very successful offseason in recruiting, but you would have liked to go out with a bang, and they still can, but a lot of their targets are now off the board. Of course, players always can flip. You see some last minute flips as well. Michigan State was, um, on the favorable side of that with Jace Clorizio, back in December. But um, as of now, not really looking like there's too much more they're going to add to their class of 26 haul. Some guys that they missed out on recently. Today, first off, I'm talking to on Monday. Um, Nehemiah Cologne,
A.
a three-star defensive lineman who chose BYU. BYU has uh, been finding a lot of success lately with the class of 2026. He was from Oklahoma. Spartans were one of his top schools. He ultimately chose BYU, though. Um, that one was a little tough because you don't have many uh, interior defensive linemen from the class of 2026 committed. That's definitely a room you want to bulk up a bit. Now, with that said, with this era of transfer portal, um, it's not too critical that you really stock up uh, certain position groups. You always have the option of the portal, and that's, looking at it as a bigger picture, that's where high school recruiting kind of loses um, its significance, really, now. Still um, very important, but you've got the option now of the transfer portal, and it's just a whole, it's a whole other option that you can rely on. Anyways, another one of the more significant ones was uh, Tyson Harley, a four-star linebacker who chose Penn State over the weekend. There was no surprise there, but another one Michigan State let get away was a finalist for him as well. But he ultimately went with the Nittany Lions. The other one, um, this one again, it's really hurts only more so because there's a lack of commits from that position. But like Harley, who's from Washington, D.C., Adrian Hamilton, also from Washington, D.C., interior line offensive lineman, chose Virginia Tech, and that one hurts because while Michigan State has been bringing in some offensive tackles, uh, hasn't had any interior offensive line commits. Definitely something that you would like to add. Definitely one of the more glaring needs from the recruiting trail. But as I said, it's not as alarming this day and age when you do lack in a certain position group because you can rely on the transfer portal and Michigan State. I think Coach McCulloch has started to find a lot more success recruiting offensive linemen. And so I think that's only going to continue. Maybe not necessarily with this class, but whether that be future classes or via the transfer portal. Definitely think that Coach McCulloch has been making Michigan State a very appealing place for recruits. And then speaking of offensive linemen, offensive tackles, Khalif Canty Jr., an in-state prospect, three-star offensive tackle. That was one where Michigan State should feel like they really missed out. You gotta capitalize on in-state talent, um, especially with a great school like Cass Tech, of course, where Canty plays. He chose Missouri. Michigan State was in the running, but you can at the same time it's not all that um, all that impactful because like I said, Coach McCulloch did a great job recruiting offensive tackles this cycle, especially, when you consider that one of their three, 4 stars is an offensive tackle, Colin Campbell. Um, so I think you're okay there, but it's just one of those where considering he's an in-state guy that you really needed to nail that one. But um, like I said, I mean, you've done almost everything you could, uh, considering where you were at. You've still lost out on a lot of recruits, but that's just the nature of recruiting. Um, you've gotten some maybe more unlikely commits, but I think the biggest thing is Michigan State has landed a lot of under the radar guys. And those are the ones, recruiting. I mean, that's that's the name of the game is finding those guys because I mean they're high school recruits. How many times do you hear stories of walk-ons becoming, all conference guys and um, making it to the NFL? You hear it all the time. So that's why when I look at the star system, it doesn't matter too much to me. Um, but I think Michigan State, with the great coaching staff they have an eye for talent. Um, and so I think you've got to be very pleased with who they've brought in, and the bulk that they've brought in, 22 commits so far from the class 2026. Um, some guys who are still out there uncommitted. Jackson Gates, another guy who um, he announces um, Tuesday. If you're watching this Tuesday, um, then it'd be today. He is likely to commit to BYU, though. Jackson Gates, a California kid who is a three-star corner. Um, Elijah West still out there, wide receiver, three-star wideout. Um, that Michigan State's in the running for. He's from Florida. Ora have brought in some really, really solid wide receivers. That one wouldn't hurt too much if you miss out on him. Um, The biggest one though would be four-star Celeste Moa. Um, he is labeled as an athlete, but primarily plays wide receiver, also plays defense. Um, Definitely would be huge, but there is some solid competition for him, including schools like Washington, Utah, Michigan, and Tennessee. So, um, that one gonna be a little, he'll be a little harder to land, but those are some of the ones to be keeping an eye out for. But regardless of the latest failures, Michigan State fans should be very content with where they're at recruiting wise, and um, I'm sure there will be maybe 2 to 3 more commits before the December National Signing Day. But for now, I think it's kind of settled down a bit. Um, as always, thank you everyone for tuning in. Very much appreciate your engagement. Hope you're all having a great start to your week, getting back into a groove after the 4th of July weekend, which I know can be tough. Um, but yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time. Thank you.